Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the laptop, its screen casting a gentle glow across the desk. I stepped closer, feeling the sudden thrum of my heartbeat as he glanced up. Our eyes met, and in that instant, the air felt heavier, charged with something unspoken. He smiled, a teasing curve of his lips that made my stomach flutter in ways I couldn't explain. "Come sit here," he said, patting the edge of his chair. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, then allowed myself to slide onto his lap, feeling the warmth of his body close to mine. A subtle brush of his hand against my back made my pulse spike. The silence between us was loud, filled with a magnetic tension that made every second stretch. His eyes held mine, intense and unyielding, like he could read every thought swirling in my mind. I caught myself leaning just a little closer, drawn in by the invisible pull. A playful smirk tugged at his lips as he brushed a stray strand of hair from my face, fingers lingering longer than they should have. The laptop hummed quietly, a backdrop to the charged atmosphere enveloping us. I tried to focus on the screen in front of us, but the closeness was dizzying. Every small movement, the shift of his hand, the subtle dip of his shoulder, the soft inhale he took, made the room feel smaller, more intimate. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, and for a moment, it felt like the world outside had vanished. Then, just as I was caught between wanting to pull away and leaning in further, he whispered something that made my skin tingle. I froze, eyes wide, a shiver running down my spine, caught in the thrill of the unknown. The laptop continued to play, the soft light flickering across his face, leaving me breathless and suspended in that split second where everything could change. And just like that, the moment broke, or maybe it hadn't yet. I couldn't tell what he would do next, and neither could I stop myself from leaning a fraction closer, heart hammering, completely on edge. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Even as I sat there, the warmth of his presence pressing gently against me, memories of our past flickered unbidden through my mind. We had known each other for years, friends who had laughed, shared secrets, and leaned on one another during quiet nights of vulnerability. But beneath the laughter and comfort, there had always been an unspoken pull, a longing we never quite admitted. He had a way of noticing the smallest details about me, the way I twirled my hair when I was nervous, the faint tremor in my voice when I tried to hide my doubts. And I, in turn, had memorized the subtle lines of worry on his forehead, the way his eyes darkened when he was tired or stressed. We both carried our secrets like carefully folded letters, never fully opened but always present. Tonight, the tension between us wasn't just about proximity, it was layered with everything we had left unsaid. As he adjusted the laptop slightly, our knees brushed, sending a jolt of electricity through me. I felt my chest tighten, a mix of excitement and fear coursing through my veins. There was a part of me that wanted to lean into the unknown, to finally let the connection we'd both denied take shape. But another part hesitated, wary of what could happen if we crossed the invisible line we had always danced around. We exchanged glances, each one loaded with history. A playful quip from him, a teasing tilt of the head, it should have been harmless, but it felt like a challenge, an invitation. I caught my reflection in the laptop screen, eyes wide, cheeks flushed, heart pounding as if it wanted to escape my chest. The tension wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a swirl of desire and apprehension that neither of us could fully name. I remembered the nights we had lingered in conversation long after everyone else had gone, our words brushing against confessions we never dared to say aloud. And now, here we were again, closer than ever, suspended in a moment that threatened to unravel the careful boundaries we had built. Every small touch, every lingering look, seemed amplified, each one whispering that maybe we had been waiting for this moment all along. Just as I thought I could gather the courage to speak, his hand rested gently near mine, a silent question hanging in the air. I swallowed, unsure whether to retreat or surrender to the magnetic pull between us. The laptop continued its quiet hum, filling the background with an ordinary sound that contrasted sharply with the extraordinary tension wrapping around us like a fragile cocoon. And in that delicate balance between desire and restraint, I realized that nothing about tonight would remain the same. Whatever happened next was uncertain, and thrillingly, irresistibly ours to discover. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The room had grown warmer, though it wasn't the heat of the laptop. It was the closeness between us, the subtle brush of his arm against mine, the way his gaze lingered just a moment too long. I tried to focus on the work on the screen, but my mind kept wandering, caught in the pull of something we had never named. Then, unexpectedly, a notification popped up on his laptop. He glanced at it, and a flicker of annoyance crossed his face, yet I felt an odd pang of something else. A twinge of jealousy, maybe, at the thought of him engaging with someone else while I was right here, inches from him. My chest tightened, and I realized just how much I wanted his attention all to myself. He noticed my sudden stillness and raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "You're quiet," he teased softly. That playful tone should have eased the tension, but instead, it made my pulse hammer harder. Every word between us now felt loaded, each laugh or glance a spark threatening to ignite something long suppressed. I shifted slightly, feeling the warmth of his hand near mine, hesitant yet magnetic. My thoughts swirled with temptation. This closeness, this charged space between us, was teasing the edges of everything we had been holding back. Part of me wanted to lean in, to close the distance, while another part screamed caution. He leaned closer too, our faces just barely apart. The air seemed to thicken with unspoken desires and the dangerous thrill of proximity. My breath caught as our eyes met, a storm of longing and uncertainty reflected in both our gazes. It was a moment full of tension, the kind that makes your heart race and your mind spin, leaving you caught between wanting and resisting. Then, just as my resolve began to waver, he froze, and the soft hum of the laptop filled the silence. Something had shifted in the air, an invisible line hovered between us, fragile yet electrifying. I felt on the verge of discovery, suspended in a moment that threatened to unravel all the careful restraint we had built over the years. Whatever happened next was a delicate balancing act between temptation and hesitation, and the uncertainty made every heartbeat feel sharper, more urgent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The house was quiet, the soft hum of the laptop now the only sound in the dimly lit room. I hadn't realized how late it had gotten until I glanced at the clock, just the two of us, no interruptions, the outside world completely shut away. The closeness that had been simmering for weeks now felt unavoidable, pressing in around us like a charged current. He leaned back slightly in his chair, and I found myself drawn closer, the subtle brush of his arm against mine making my pulse race. I caught the faint scent of his cologne, warm and familiar, a memory of nights spent laughing and sharing secrets, now laced with something more. My stomach fluttered as our knees brushed, a small touch that sent a shiver up my spine. "Are you staying focused?" he asked, a teasing edge to his voice. I laughed nervously, feeling my cheeks warm. I wanted to reply, but the words tangled in my throat, drowned out by the thundering of my own heartbeat. Every glance, every slight movement between us felt loaded, as though the air itself had thickened with anticipation. Our eyes met again, and I felt it, an invisible magnetic pull drawing us together, daring us to cross a line we had both skirted for so long. The laptop screen glowed softly between us, but it felt distant, irrelevant. It was as if the room had shrunk to nothing but him and me, a delicate balance of temptation and restraint, each of us holding our breath in silent understanding. Then, a sudden sound, a door creaking outside, made us both pause. My chest tightened, caught between relief and disappointment. The moment felt impossibly fragile, a perfect storm of tension and longing that could shatter with the slightest interruption. I could feel his gaze on me, warm and intent, and I knew we were teetering on the edge of something inevitable. I leaned in slightly, just enough to feel the heat radiating from him, and the world seemed to vanish. The next second would decide everything, but before anything could happen, the soft ping of a message on his laptop echoed through the room, slicing the silence, leaving us suspended in anticipation. And there we remained, inches apart, hearts racing, each wondering if the other would make the first move, while the laptop continued its quiet glow, a silent witness to the storm of desire and hesitation between us. Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The air was thick with unspoken words, our faces lit by the soft glow of the laptop. I could feel my pulse racing, every heartbeat echoing the tension that had built for weeks. Just as I leaned in, ready to speak, his phone buzzed on the desk, breaking the spell like a thunderclap in a quiet room. He glanced at it, and the color drained slightly from his face. I followed his gaze and froze. A message preview flickered on the screen, a name I didn't recognize, a tone of intimacy I hadn't expected. My chest tightened with an ache I hadn't anticipated, a sharp pang of jealousy and fear. "Who's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though it wavered slightly. His eyes met mine, wide and conflicted, and for a moment, the playful, teasing man I had grown so close to seemed gone. "It's complicated," he admitted quietly, his hand hovering over the keyboard, unsure. The tension between us shifted instantly, from anticipation to uncertainty, from flirtation to confrontation. I felt a surge of emotion, anger, hurt, and longing all tangled together. "Complicated how?" I pressed, leaning in, trying to make sense of the sudden storm. His gaze flickered to mine, intense and almost pleading, as if begging me to understand without speaking. Then, he did something unexpected. He closed the laptop gently and set it aside. His hand reached for mine, not aggressively, but with a desperate tenderness that left me breathless. "I should have told you sooner," he whispered. "I was scared you wouldn't understand, that I'd ruin everything." My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of relief and disbelief. The revelation wasn't what I expected, it wasn't a betrayal in the usual sense, but a hidden desire, a secret fear that he hadn't trusted anyone enough to share. And yet, in this moment, the closeness between us felt undeniable, raw, and electric. I swallowed hard, meeting his gaze, my mind racing with everything unsaid. The room felt smaller, charged with vulnerability and the weight of confessions finally laid bare. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked softly. "Because I wanted this," he said, voice low, fingers gently brushing mine. "I wanted to figure it out with you first, not lose you before we even had the chance." The twist left me stunned, heart hammering, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous, desire mixed with the thrill of emotional risk. In that charged silence, I realized we were on the edge of something irreversible, something that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the magnetic pull between us. And as our fingers lingered together, suspended over the desk, the unspoken question hung in the air: would we finally cross the line, or would this tension remain unresolved, a storm waiting to break? Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The room was tense, thick with the weight of unspoken confessions. After the shock of the revelation, silence stretched between us like a taut wire, every heartbeat amplified in the quiet. I could feel the tremor in my own hands as I pulled back slightly, unsure whether to step away or lean in closer. "Why didn't you trust me?" I asked, voice trembling despite my attempt at control. The words hung between us, raw and demanding. He ran a hand through his hair, a mixture of frustration and vulnerability in his eyes. "I was scared," he admitted, voice low. Scared I'd mess everything up, scared I'd lose you if I opened up. My chest tightened. It wasn't the kind of anger that pushes people apart, but the ache of longing, the frustration of years spent skirting around the truth. You almost did lose me, I said softly, each word deliberate. Not because of what you didn't say, but because we kept dancing around what we really felt. He leaned forward, earnest and unguarded, the tension in his posture mirroring my own. I don't want to lose this, he whispered. Us. I need to take the risk now, before it's too late. I swallowed, heart racing as the magnitude of the moment sank in. This wasn't just about secrets or confessions, it was about courage, about finally stepping into vulnerability, about making a choice that could change everything. I realized that the fear and hesitation we had carried for so long were powerless compared to the pull between us. Our hands met in a tentative touch, fingers intertwining as if testing the waters of possibility. The warmth of his grasp grounded me even as adrenaline coursed through my veins. Then we face it together, I said, letting my voice carry the decision I'd been holding back. All of it. No more secrets, no more holding back. His lips curved into a relieved, almost shy smile, and I felt a surge of emotion, part excitement, part awe, part undeniable attraction. We were raw, vulnerable, and yet connected in a way that made the room feel smaller, the world outside irrelevant. Every look, every subtle gesture between us was magnified, charged with a new energy, a promise of something stronger than hesitation. The laptop hummed quietly in the background, once a silent observer of tension, now a subtle witness to our emotional breakthrough. I realized that while the storm of feelings had not fully settled, the air between us had shifted. Choices had been confronted, emotions laid bare, and for the first time in what felt like forever, we were aligned, ready to step into whatever came next together. And as our eyes locked, filled with mutual understanding and unspoken commitment, the room seemed to hold its breath, leaving only one question lingering: what would the first step forward look like? Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The tension that had built for weeks finally melted away, replaced by a warmth that filled the room like sunlight spilling through a window. We sat close, hands still intertwined, and I felt the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my fingertips, a quiet reassurance after the storm of emotions we had just weathered. He smiled softly, a gentle, vulnerable expression that made my chest ache in the best possible way. I never want to go back to keeping things hidden, he said. Not with you. Not ever. I leaned in slightly, brushing my shoulder against his, the subtle closeness a comfort rather than a temptation now. Me neither, I whispered. The words felt heavier, more meaningful than anything we had said before. It wasn't just about attraction anymore, it was trust, it was understanding, it was a bond forged in honesty and vulnerability. For a long moment, we simply sat there, letting the silence stretch without pressure, letting it carry the promise of what was to come. Every glance between us held more than longing, it held gratitude, relief, and the quiet thrill of finally being seen for who we truly were. Then he did something small but significant. He tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering just long enough to send a shiver of familiarity and affection through me. I laughed softly, a sound full of release and happiness. It feels like we're finally here, I said, resting my head lightly against his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me gently closer. The laptop hummed quietly in the background, no longer a source of distraction or tension, just a soft glow illuminating the moment we had claimed as ours. The air was still, intimate, and full of the quiet joy that comes from choosing each other despite fear, hesitation, and uncertainty. As the minutes passed, we talked softly, sharing little confessions, laughter, and plans for the future. Each word, each smile, built a bridge over the cracks we had felt in our connection. By the time we leaned back and met each other's gaze again, the storm had completely passed, leaving only calm, warmth, and a sense of belonging that neither of us had dared to imagine until now. Finally, with a shared laugh and a tender look, we rested our foreheads together, hearts synchronized in a quiet, enduring promise. Whatever challenges came next, we knew we would face them side by side, together, honest and unafraid. In that perfect, suspended moment, the room held no tension, no doubts, only the quiet certainty of love that had been tested, survived, and flourished.